The great outdoors. A paradise of nature, just waiting to be explored. Untouched by civilization, it's the antithesis of peace, calm, and serenity. For some people, anyway. Others, well, you'll see.
What? Oh my god. Oh! I told you. Are you kidding me? What is that?
This is where I'd be setting up camp. A small clearing in a valley called Glen Orchy, which could also be described as being in the middle of absolutely bloody nowhere. The nearest town was 12 miles away, so, much to my dismay, there was no escape. I had to stay the night. To make my time here a little more comfortable, I set about getting my tent set up, the first real step in any camping adventure, or so I'm told. It was here that I was facing my first real hurdle. As it turns out, the tent's bag was a pain in the arse to get open. That, or I'm just incompetent and was missing something really obvious. Thinking about it, the latter sounds quite likely in all honesty. After finally dislodging the tent from its bag, I found there was a 6-step guide to constructing my humble abode for the night. Now that I had an instructions guide, how hard could tent building really be?
Well, it is actually. Spread out the tent on a ground clear of sharp items, then it lists it in some, I think that's Spanish. El tel? No, I'm not even attempting.
Luckily, step 1 in the guide was relatively simple. That, however, was the end of anything being relatively simple whatsoever during this entire trip. I then moved on to step 2 of building the tent, which proved to be far more difficult than it seemed, mainly due to my own incompetence.
Insert the red holes into the red sleeves.
Do you think you're doing it the right way?
Well, there's no other red bit on it.
You do put those poles in for those pins to the ground.
What pins?
Do you not know what you're holding right now?
No, not a clue.
You know that's to get hammered into the ground.
No.
To keep... Well, put them down.
Sadly, my absolutely flawless plan of trying to put the tent's pegs into the support sleeves wasn't approved by my film crew. They, however, gave me a very vague hint to show me where I was going wrong.
From
Red. Oh! I told you. They look like red holes.
So after that small bit of minor confusion was resolved, surely I'd be able to build the rest of the tent with no issues whatsoever and be able to move on to other essentials like food and warmth. Right?
Oh! No. Is that meant to happen?
When is the crew gonna have to come in here?
Probably quite
soonish.
Right. Give it 5 minutes. If I still can't get it in 5 minutes, you can do step 2 for me. Oh, it's disconnected again. I give up. You can do it.
After finally admitting defeat at the prospect of having to put some red poles and some red sleeves, I handed over tent construction to my crew, who both told me they were very well experienced in camping and would have no issues whatsoever constructing the tent. Unfortunately, however, it turns out this second step was even a challenge to the most experienced campers, as my crew also failed to set up the tent. So, I fell back onto plan C, which was to simply give up and have my dad do it for me, because, you know, why have a parent on site unless you can take advantage of them in the pursuit of laziness. Regardless, I now actually had somewhere to sleep, so it was time for the next task: setting up a fire. And as I could no longer be trusted to do any of these tasks on my own, considering how well setting up the tent went, my dad decided it would be best if he set up the fire, and assigned me to find something called Old Man's Beard.
Okay. How much do I need? Like, a full layer?
Old Man's Beard is a type of shrubbery, which is incredibly dry, making it catch fire easily, and grows very fast during the spring and summer, making it an excellent renewable resource for fire starting. Once I'd gathered enough and the rest of the fire's foundations were laid out, including some dry firewood and some nearby tree branches, it was time to get the fire actually started, using a classic method of a flint and tinder. Which may as well have been as useful as rubbing two sticks together at the beginning.
Give me a second. It's not as easy as it is in Minecraft. Oh!
This then went on for another 10 minutes of me just kneeling there attempting to light this fire, so I decided to cheat slightly. Again.
What? Oh, got it! Oh.
I had done it. I had successfully lit a small bit of cotton wool, which was a very hard and arduous task. Our fire was started. And then we moved on to the third and final necessity that I had to face, food for the night. And sadly, for all the times that I had cheated thus far, my dad had a little surprise for me regarding my dinner.
I'm not installed. Why is there so much tinfoil? Oh, it's an actual fish. Oh no.
Yes, my dad had actually gotten a fish from the river whilst me and my crew weren't looking and expected me to open it up, gut it and eat it. I wasn't terribly enthralled. All I had to do was cut off its head and tail and open it up slightly before I could cook it. A seemingly simple task to my dad, but when faced with a dead, still slimy fish corpse in front of you, it's not the most pleasant task in the world, let me tell you. Now that ordeal was by with for now, I decided to get on with what I was originally planning for my dinner, which is actually a luxury dish of mine. Pasta with a lovely salt topping layer. Firstly though, I needed some water, which my dad said he was keeping in the fridge.
Oh, you're kidding me. What is that? Ah. Right.
After eventually retrieving the water, it was time to get cooking.
It involves pasta and we don't have any salt. Oh, we do. Ah. And lovely salt.
Sign them up.
As it turns out, boiling pasta over an open fire is not the easiest thing in the world to do. So, once again, I took a slightly cheap tactic to speed the process up. And by cheap tactic, I mean not boil the pasta on the open fire whatsoever. Soon, however, the fish was ready.
Oh, this is a ribbon. Scott, I can't eat that. Okay. I hate to admit it, but that's actually really nice.
The fish, surprisingly, was actually quite nice, but I had to quickly abandon it as my pasta was just about boiled. My luxury dish was complete. Finally, I had done something successfully with no help during this trip.
And there is the luxury dish. Ha ha!
The luxury dish is now gone.
When you're in this McVey, however, nothing good lasts forever, as my luxury dish fell straight to the ground because I'm a moron.
The top layer was fine, the bottom layer not, but fine.
And things only got worse from there. Afterwards, my film crew left to go home, and I was left on my own for a few hours, when the weather became its worst. I was in for a very, very long night. So, this is the epilogue where I'm supposed to have a big monologue about camping giving me some sort of life experience or some other crap, right? Nah, camping's terrible, don't bother with it. The end.